guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Reading Bear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Vindictive Ex-Wife Illegally Signed Application to Local HOA in My Name. I'll start this off by saying my ex is vindictive as hell. We've been fully divorced since about right before the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared, and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated and we're in an at-fault state. It was messy since D-Day. All of the stereotypes. First the sobbing and then trickled truths saying I love you. It was just one time. Okay, it was 2 years. And then the gaslighting followed by I'm going to take you for everything. Before packing her crap and walking out. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was in all the time we were together. We were married 5 years and together for 7. And in 2 of those 5 married years she had affairs with 3 other men. The final one being a foreign businessman of some sort from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for STDs and was thankfully negative. Yes, she got pregnant by the final AP, and no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about all affairs before the baby was born thanks to a call from the first AP. My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me. But since we live in and were married in an at-fault state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house, and the equity was divided 70/30. So, I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home to put as a down payment on a different house closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade. But suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine. My ex did show up to my house once. But I refused to let her in. She bitched at me that I'd financially ruined her in the divorce. I said that if she was fully willing to do that to me first, and the witch had the audacity to say it should have been my life ducked over and not hers. I laughed so hard and said it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers. I said if she was gonna sue me, then to go ahead and sue me. It'd end up the same way in court because she has nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no angel, but I didn't do anything to her. And she was the one who ruined our marriage. She then said she'd tell everyone she could that I abused her. I said I'd sue her for defamation if she did, and I was recording our interaction and had those words saved to my phone. She went wide-eyed and her jaw dropped. The look people are calling the surprised Pikachu face. Then I asked why she was there, if not to just try and make trouble. Because she had a new man in her life that knocked her up. She just huffed at me and said he isn't around much, and she's stuck in a tiny apartment living off his child support till he comes back. It was immature of me, I know, but I did the bit of playing the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me to go duck myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than her any time. She raged at me and then got in her car to leave. Haven't seen her since. There is an HOA in my neighborhood. But I was not legally obligated to join it because the last owner of my house was not a member. I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well. The HOA had no grounds to force me to join and were not happy about it. The HOA president would show up with forms every week for the first month demanding I sign them. Then she threatened to take me to court. To which I had to get a C&D sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop that. So, she started harassing me by looking for any infractions she possibly could to report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the HOA hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do. And I like to grill when the weather is good. And my neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. I had the police called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having my friends over. The HOA president I caught trespassing once when she was trying to peer into my windows. I called the police, but she denied ever doing it. So, I got cameras. She hasn't trespassed since. But I still got repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house. Some months ago, I started getting letters for fines in the mail. And when I contacted the HOA, their representative claimed they had it on record that I'd joined and needed to pay all fees effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. Then they emailed a scanned copy of the forms, and they had a signature on them. But it was not mine. It was very similar in some ways, and I recognized right away as being my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like. But it was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature. But the HOA still demanded to go to court. And it took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly and were threatening to put a lien on my house. We went to court and the HOA president looked very smug. But my lawyer pointed out how the signature wasn't the same as mine and was very inconsistent in the various forms. I'd never allowed the HOA president in my house, and I'd never requested the forms. The idiot HOA president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding. But when pressed where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife called the HOA and they sent her the forms, then got them back in the mail signed. But then she actually claimed she thought I'd signed them. The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was. The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, that had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her HOA. She went quiet and I could see the "oh shit" look on her face as the hamster wheels were turning, and she seemed to finally mentally put the pieces together. My lawyer then counterclaimed that what the HOA did was blatant fraud, and legal actions must be taken. And they were. I countersued the HOA for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd gotten since moving in. Which I had lots of proof of. That won me about 10 grand after lawyer fees that I decided to put towards my mortgage. The HOA president was removed from her throne. I like to think she was kicking and screaming. She was also slapped with a hefty fine. I've seen her outside a few times, and she always looks at me like I am the devil. The HOA itself had to pay all of my legal fees too. I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature. But can't, because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with her third AP. She's somewhere in Europe from what I can see of the final posts on her FB before she disappeared. So, I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the US, so that was a wash. I'm not getting letters from the HOA anymore though. And the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this though. Other than the $10,000 payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. The next story is titled, "The Karen with the White Audi." This happened about 4 years ago now, before Karens were called Karens, but the type still existed. I'm an electromechanical engineer and had been called out to deal with a set of faulty automatic gates. They had stuck in the open position, and it was compromising the security of the building. My job was to find out what had caused them to stick open, fix it, and get them working again. This particular manufacturer of gates uses an encoder to tell the control panel where the gates are in their swing, and it turned out kids had been riding them and had caused this to go out of calibration. Recalibration was a simple 2-minute job. I put a couple of traffic cones on each side of the gates and set the calibration going. During this process, the gates open fully and then close fully twice at about half the usual speed. Like I say, about 120 seconds. Enter entitled Karen. She had parked her white Audi in the secure compound whilst the gates were open, and even though she was only allowed in there to load and unload into her shop. She regularly parked all day in a visitor space, totally against the terms of her lease. So, I set the calibration going and the gates did their first swing totally open. At which point Karen came out to her car and started her engine. The gates started to close again, and Karen pulled out of her space like a nutjob and accelerated towards the gates, stopping just before the cones but revving her engine like she wasn't pleased. Seeing them closing, she pressed her fob button to get them to open, but of course they were calibrating, so they were totally ignoring all instructions from the fobs. The gates closed fully. The lock mechanism engaged, and they started to do their second swing, at which point she started to roll forwards, revving all the time. Just as she touched the cone with her car, she pushed it back and broke the infrared safety beam, thus aborting the entire procedure and making the gates lock in a slightly open state. She sounded her horn and shouted at me, demanding to be let out. I told her she had caused the processor to fault and those gates weren't opening anytime soon. It would be at least 5 minutes before I could restart the procedure as I had to power them totally down. I didn't, but she didn't know. She proceeded to start shouting and getting angry, so I just said, "Sorry for you." I'm parked outside. I locked the control box, walked to my van with my tools in the pocket and started driving away. About 2 minutes later I got a call from the landlord of the building pleading with me to go back and saying that Karen was really sorry. I gave in, I went back, and I started the calibration again, but this time I deliberately turned the speed on both motors to the lowest setting, so it took about 10 minutes in total. Karen never did apologize, and she still speeded out like an idiot as soon as I moved the cones, but it gave me great pleasure knowing that my malice made her almost half an hour late. The next story is titled, Karens Blame the Government for Their High Water Bills. My mom works for utilities and knows those Karen secrets. Context. My mother works in the utilities department in my town, so she tends to hear just about everything, and anything entitled because of people's water bills. However, she also practically lives off of Facebook. She loves the site and endlessly scrolls on there during her downtime. So, she also hears everything, and anything entitled when people complain about their water bill. My town is also in what my mom calls a level 5 drought. Now I am not an expert, but from what I can do to clarify is that it's AD3 teetering onto AD4, and thus have caused us to have stage 2 water restrictions. And to ensure everyone follows these restrictions, people will be fined for their misuse of our water because we are so close to losing all the water we have in our state and especially our specific town. Now to basically what I need to get off my chest. My mom takes her job very seriously as she worked her way up into being basically the person who you go to talk about your water bill and see if there are any leaks and or possible damages that you have to be compensated for, or if you need her to send someone to check your water meter, things like that. Now people in my town are notorious for not taking things like this seriously, even my extended family don't. The public are not allowed to be washing cars, filling pools, filling hot tubs, watering lawns, that sort of thing. In comes the Karens that has been recently complaining on Facebook about her bill. For all I know, this could be the same person. My mom talks very fast, and I was helping my aunt with something as my mom was talking to us about this, so I only caught tidbits. But boy did those tidbits make me mad. From what I can tell and from what I have heard, it's about 3 to 4 people, but I'm only going to talk about 2 for simplicity's sake. We have Karen 1, complaining about her $2,000 plus dollar bill and blaming the government for it. Saying that they are embezzling money from the public when in all actuality it's the fact that she has a pool that she refuses to stop using because it is very hot out. It's 88 degrees Fahrenheit out here and that is very hot for us. And her pool is huge and has it well hidden behind her trailer. And she also refuses to pay her bills at all, and this is causing the higher ups in my mom's department to consider shutting off Karen 1's water entirely so she can't use the pool or even go to the bathroom or take a shower. So, no water for Karen 1 if she brings them to the breaking point. Because of her not paying her bill, the price from the previous bill rolls over into the current one. The way the utilities bills work is that you are paying for the previous month that you have been using. So, if you are like this person and you didn't pay your $200 bill for April, it will roll over and add to the $300 bill for May, thus making your current bill $500. Then we have Karen 2, who just can't be bothered. She barely gets billed anything but went as far as tampering with the water meter in February when the previous tenants left. Her landlord caught on and the utilities department turned off the meter, so she had to come in on March to get billed for the tampered amount of water consumption. With her new now regular bill has failed to make a single payment. She has to pay around $433 for water and she needs to pay over $300 for gas deposit, which she also hasn't paid yet. What really sucks about all of this is that people are just refusing to listen and think the world revolves around them. People on Facebook are trying to start a petition to get the government to come clean and admit to embezzling or something along those lines, when that isn't the case. What's really going on is that people don't know how to follow rules or pay their bills. They can't even take into consideration that with the summer here, they start consuming even more water by using the air conditioners. If you don't pay your bill, it will grow and grow and grow until finally your water, gas, electricity, etc., is shut off. If you hide everything under your carpet, eventually that lump of junk will get so big that it will show what you've been hiding, and you will have to clean up your mess. Hell, one of the gas stations in town has had a leaky water line since the day it was built and the owner refuses to get it fixed. It wastes around 200,000 gallons of water a day, if I remember correctly, and yet the owner can't even be bothered to care. People, pay your goddamn bills, please. Be responsible. I know we all don't make that much money, but if that is the case, start conserving your stuff, use less water, take care of your things. If your toilet is running, get it fixed. If you have a leak, get it fixed. The less you waste, the less you have to pay. The last story is titled, Corrupt Cop and Greedy Landlord. This happened nearly 2 years ago. My parents bought this land in the middle of the city. The center, my dad called it. Well, my dad, because we moved into this city, called Sochi, from Berlin, thought the geographical center of a city is the most progressed. Like in Berlin. While it's not like that usually, it depends on the city's history. And this city's history ended up being the most progressed near the sea. And the center of the city was a ghetto. That's how me and my family ended up living in a ghetto area, while being middle class for European and American standards. Let's say above average per Russian standards. We already bought the land, so there was no go back. So, my parents started to plan our house on their own. My dad beforehand learned architectures and sketching. He practiced it 2 years beforehand, before the event aka from 2016 up to the events of this aka 2018, even just for this project. It was and still is very important to him to this day. He insisted on doing it how he wants without hiring anyone to do it for him. He commanded the workers as well and helped them out with building etc. as well, while being 57 years old. He is a veteran and for his age, very fit, healthy and strong. I admire my dad. But now to the actual story. One day my mom got a call from the police saying a Mr. EP said they cut down a tree. My mom got confused and asked who Mr. EP even was. Apparently, he was the owner of a 5-level Soviet house which was right in front of our property. It's like a house where for example some 50 to 100 people lived in horrible conditions to that. Russian ghetto blocks don't look like American ghetto blocks, I promise you. The Russian ones still from Stalin's time with no renovation or anything. Proper rundown cheap houses with many apartments basically. The landlord/owner accused my dad of doing this crime and he filed against my dad. Got a cop onto my dad over a tree, and now, the best part of this is that they did go to court. The landlord got few old ladies to act as eyewitnesses for him and didn't have any more evidence than those witnesses. They stated a time and date in the court. But my dad at this time with all the workers weren't on the property at all. They got lucky and this day our stuff from Berlin arrived on large trucks, so they were getting all trucks unloaded and put all furniture etc. into our storage room. The whole day. So, all of them had a waterproof alibi due to the fact there were camera recordings and they had filed documents on every worker who worked with them. In general, meaning they gave them to court confirming that all workers were present with my dad and who were seen in the recordings. The whole day, carrying furniture. My parents of course won the lawsuit. But after they did, the petty landlord got his cop friend, and the cop didn't stop nagging my parents about you didn't give them all papers in court, did you? You could have ordered someone else from the outside to do it etc. etc. My parents ended up paying the cop and the landlord so they will be happy and stop bothering my parents when they try to build their house. 2 years have passed and the relationship with the 5-level house did not end in good terms, and this wasn't the last story out them. They caused us more trouble in the time passing, which I will talk about in another post. Thanks for listening.